Greetings, greetings. Sending you all some warm, positive vibrations. So this is Body-Culinary, and this morning, this early day, while it's still the early day, we're going to continue with our simple practice of intentional relaxation. And then we'll move on to the contemplation for today. So you're welcome to find a comfortable position. If you have issues with your back or your knees, you're welcome to find a chair in which you can sit upright, so you don't have any experiencing any arching of your back or any rounding of your back. You move your shoulders around, down and back, so that you have a lot of space between your ear and your shoulder. You're welcome to take a comfortable position where your knees can be open and allow your hips to open. If you need to, you can also add a yoga block underneath your hips. So we are breathing in through the nose, out through the nose. You're welcome to have your palms up, your palms down. You can have your hands together in any position where your hands feel comfortable. So we're breathing very deeply. We're listening to see if our inhale and our exhale are synchronized, and if we're breathing very deeply and we're allowing the chest to expand with a lot of air. All for the purpose of seeing whether or not the breath can help us ground back into our bodies. If it can help us be more aware of mindless consumption, whether that's food or television, noticing when we're going in and out of consciousness, not in terms of being awake, but awake on another level, because we know we're awake in a conscious state, but in terms of being awake and not being led by the subconscious thoughts that we dip into when we're asleep, and is influencing also most of our behaviors out here. All right, so in a comfortable position, we're just going to embark on some simple breathing. No religion required, no gurus required. So this could perhaps be a good time to tap into your own onboard, divine, innate intelligence that you and I, each one of us, were born with. And if there's something that you're working on or working through, a project, or if you're looking for what the next step is and you would like to be internally guided with no middleman, you can ask a question of yourself. Where perhaps am I stuck? What do I need to do next? And allow the answer, that's one of many. It could even be something you're working on in your body. What do I need to do next? And so we can cultivate the practice, not even just a practice. Well, it is a practice, but an awareness of constantly learning to trust ourselves. To trust ourselves. We are trained to trust everyone else, right? And so doctors and other people, professionals, they have their place. But when it makes sense of the ultimate trust that you cultivate is yourself, because you have you're with you all the time. So if you like, you can write a few words, anything that organically comes up for you within your journal. And you can also listen. You can also listen, because the quieter you get, the more you can hear that internal intelligence. I have found that quite often, quite honestly, a lot of times, and I am not a guru and I'm not above anyone else, but I have found, and I have found that quite often I can't hear. I can't hear clearly. Like you go in and out of the being able to hear intuitive communication, intuitive direct communication during the course of the day, because your attention is being pulled out to emergencies, aka survival mode. And so in survival mode, important distinction, these are some of the things that we're going over in the cocoon. Survival mode quite often is driven by that part of our psyche, or that part of our awareness called the ego, which is communicating all the time to defend us. It's at every barrier, it's at every wall around us, and it's defending us on automatic pilot, because if that part of our psyche doesn't defend us, who or what is going to defend us as people, as women, as Afro women? There's something that's inside of you, an intelligence that is looking to defend you. Now, this part of our awareness that's defending us, it doesn't shut off. And anytime it perceives any kind of a threat, it has an immediate reaction. And so that's something to be grateful for, that it has a reaction. However, it is so primal, and it has been activated to a certain extent, and even skewed because of a lot of trauma that we have experienced as children. So it can perceive threat where there is no threat, and it can even turn in on itself from our own thoughts and from our own memories, if that makes sense. So to make distinctions, I love distinctions, because I say distinctions, I found that distinctions, and you can let me know what you have experienced respectfully in the comments, I've found in years of observation and study and practice that the ego quite often is not set up to make the distinctions. And so that part of our psyche really drives self-sabotaging behaviors. So these are some of the things, in addition to whole, fresh, top quality fuel, unprocessed, peaceful foods that we are consuming in the cocoon. We're getting to the root of what is driving a lot of our self-sabotaging behaviors, right? Because although it's not cool, it's not good what others have done to ourselves in our quiet moments, and this is not something I invite you to pause beating up on yourself, but in our quiet moments, we may or may not be able to acknowledge that a lot of the habits, self-sabotaging habits we have done, if we have to weigh them out, a great amount of damage to ourselves when driven from this primal part of our psyche that's supposed to comfort us, right, and make us feel safe. It is not a logical part of our psyche. And so that brings me today to today's early Contemplation, something I have contemplated quite often, is that many of us have a death wish. Now, this may sound morbid. If this does not apply to you, please leave this right here, because what I say may not be the truth. It may not be your truth. It may not be your experience. I have observed many of us. I'm not exempt. I just have made an effort to be aware, but I'm still on a journey as well. I have observed very clearly in years of working with clients, working in gyms, working in a holistic health center, around my own family, even with myself, that many of us have a death wish. And what do I mean by a death wish? Well, by a death wish, I mean that many of us don't want to be here. We don't want to be here if we're quiet. Because if we are engaging in activities that are depleting our life force, that put us in harm's way physically, what do we call that? If we can just press pause and stand back and objectively observe ourselves, what would we call it? What do we call it when we're ingesting a literal poison that literally has written on the package? This will cause birth defects to your next generation. This is going to potentially cause cancer to your organs. This can result in cancer of your mouth. What do we call that? What do we call that? Maybe we don't call it anything. Maybe we call it just perhaps wanting to experience, we want pleasure and we want comfort. We want the opiate. This does not make us bad human beings. As humans, this does not make us bad because we want to experience comfort. However, I invite you to consider the source of the comfort. I invite you in your quiet moments to ask yourself, and I invite you to tune in, maybe perhaps, if this could be beneficial, to replay this while you're cleaning and decluttering. I think it's a great practice, right? There are several practices I call my secret weapons, or the things that have been sustainable over the years. I invite you to put support or create a support for yourself, and something that can keep you aware and proactive, that motivate you to stay engaged and to stay in action around what you say is important for you to experience on this planet. If that is health, if that is vitality, we need the vitality to achieve our aspirations, our goals, our dreams, our visions for our life. We need vitality to do that. We need focus to do that, in particular when we're in a climate of everything. I mean, most things, like there's a distinct campaign to get you to spend not just your money, but your life energy on everything that is surrounded around vices and distraction for profit. It is what it is. If you disagree, you can respectfully disagree. Keep right here. I'm not here on the internet to debate with anyone. My life experience is not up for debate, and this may not resonate with you. This particular communication or message may not be for you, and that is totally fine. That is totally fine. I invite you to consider, though, why is there such a need to medicate all the time? Why? Slow down and ask the question, why? And tune in to feel. I invite you to feel the why. Feel the energetics of the why. Let your intuition bubble up to the surface, because your intuition that's a part of your intelligence that knows if something is beneficial to you or others. It will not harm you and it will not harm others, right? There's distinct, if we tune in, there's this distinct vibe, if you will, or there's an intuition of direction and guidance that comes from within. Some of it is to protect us, and some of it is guiding us towards what we want to experience out here. See, no religion required. It's actually very, very practical. So if we're enticed, when we're little, we're not born out of the womb wanting to smoke cigarettes. We're not born out of the womb wanting to get drunk. And I'm not knocking anybody's practices or anybody's enjoyment. This is just one woman's perspective. We're not born. Now, perhaps there's some of us that may have a touch of fetal alcohol syndrome, or may experience a type of chemical, physiological addiction to certain substances because of the awareness or lack of awareness of our parents. And they could have been addicted at such a state that because of their consumption patterns, then that information is stored into our DNA. Also, when we have very fearful, traumatic experiences, and I'm saying this as a mother, we may or may not be aware, especially with young mothers, that your feelings, right, scared, excitement, they cause physiological uh, responses in the body, like butterflies in the stomach, nervousness in your stomach or in your gut, chills when you're scared or you're emotional. So there are physiological and there are chemical responses, literally physiologically in your body. Your cells, you have over 1 trillion cells in your body, these living organisms, communities of organisms and cells and living cells and tissue that make up your heart, your lungs, your arteries. I know we're concerned about the face and the muscles, but they're all systems, living systems of communication that are keeping this whole thing together and functioning as a factory, as a team, as a spiritual, organic team. And they're functioning. And so they have a memory. They have a memory. The cells float around in a fluid, and all of these fluid, everything has cells, and the cells are living. These cells actually all eat and they poop. They metabolize and they assimilate nutrition, the appropriate nutrition. You know, the things that we eat are broken down, and each part of the system of the cells take their part and poop out and excrete the rest. So they eat and they poop. It's a living system. They have a memory, and trauma is stored in our memory. A scared mom, a traumatized father, somebody that has experienced in front of them all types of offing, if they've experienced other human beings that their lives have been taken from them traumatically in front of them. That has a physiological response. So our bodies remember this stuff in order to protect us so it can avoid it the next time, right? This is all very, very practical. So if you're experiencing trauma and it seems relentless over and over, or even if it's in a space of years, yet you don't have the time to process it and you don't have mature, safe guidance to process it, it's quite natural that you're going to store it. It's going to get stored in the memory so that those files can be accessed quickly to avoid the trauma again in the future. This is practical information. This is not discussed when we're in school. We get lots of information that has its place, counting, spelling, so that we can get good jobs. And I'm not going to make that bad or wrong, but these other aspects of our psyche and how our psyche and our brain and our body functions, who has a vested interest in making sure you're clear on how it operates and functions and what are the implications and the connections. Imagine that if we had been taught in school that all the trauma that you're watching and observing and everything that's happened to you, and if even violation of children was acknowledged or neglect was acknowledged, that this could potentially and will likely affect you into all the years of your life and affect your ability to function and perform and to have good lasting relationships. Who's vested interest? Who would have a vested interest in that? Also, if people are not experiencing that for themselves, that's not their quote unquote job, right? So where would that information come from? And if you don't have the information, if that hasn't been your living experience, how can you be expected to transmit that to the next generation so they don't encounter some of the same challenges, or at least you can pass the baton so that they have a greater chance at living a productive, healthy, fully manifested, fully self-expressed life. Ideally, that would come from our culture, right? The way we live day in and day out. And ideally, it would be a safe space of someone that is transmitting the wisdom, which you cannot Google, right? The wisdom and the gems of lessons learned from their life experience down to the next generation so that they can take off and move forward earlier. And it seems that even there, between religions, and even many leaders, that many folks that have some wisdom that's been passed down to them, a lot of it has been rendered, I don't know if I want to say inactive or dormant, I don't know if that's it, but compromised. And many individuals have been compromised, maybe perhaps due to their own trauma, and figuring that they have to position themselves so they can secure themselves financially and make sure that they have resources, forget about everybody else. There's so many layers and layers and layers. I don't have all the answers, but what I can say, what I'm clear on, is that with all that's going on, you, I, are 1,000% responsible for our lives, for our own lives, before the president, vice president, before your church, your pastor, your religious leader, your lover. You, I, are 1,000% responsible. Stuff has happened to you. You may have likely been violated or oppressed or experienced trauma. It doesn't take away from the reality that you are responsible for your life. And that's a tall order. We are encouraged. We're encouraged to focus more on the verses and the stories and the songs more than reality. We're encouraged to pray all day, but not power walk, but not prepare fruits and vegetables. I've often said, and I could be called sassy, which I'm not looking to be disrespectful at all, to my elders, but I am one that has, from a child, I observe patterns. Why don't they have cutting boards with standing islands inside these houses of worship, particularly, I could say, for Afro people, so we can be cutting up fruits and vegetables? Why are we not out in the original garden in nature, planting, which would be therapeutic more than caught up? We're so caught up in the words and the personalities and the outfits that we're left depleted. And we've been beating up on ourselves. If I'm praying all day, how come it's not working? We pray and it's temporary, and it doesn't take long for the nostalgia of the music to wear off, and we're praying and we're chanting. I'm saying it's coming from my personal experience, coming from a very religious family. I have never seen so many 40-day consecration fasts where everybody gets bigger and bigger. If nothing else, can we not acknowledge something is missing? And if we just had to, I like to say, these apps, the apps on these phones that can show you how much time you're spending in front of the screen. So let's just say hypothetically, as someone that came up mostly in a Pentecostal stomp shout church, if we had to have an app for how much time was spent in the church or how many services, 6 o'clock a.m. service, regular service, afternoon service, sometimes the evening service, and how much time during this event is being had, and everybody's making potato salad and this and that to contribute, to bring down and sell for the church to the church. If we had to have an app for how much time was spent there, I've even had folks that I've worked with that spend so much time, professional people, 2-3 degrees, that spent so much time at the church, but body is carrying adipose tissue. This is not fat shame, I'm making distinction. Adipose tissue would be unhealthy fatty tissue on the body. Is carrying in excess of 250 libras of pounds of waste on the body, but in the church all the time, in the house of worship all the time. As someone that used to go to the East Carnival and the African American Street Festival in NYC for years, and I would love to see all of the Black businesses that are there. Loved, oh my God, it's so refreshing. We look forward to it now with this whole COVID. And even before COVID, they moved it around, but that's another story. But just to see all of these businesses come out, and as someone that has had a stint in in Islam. One time I actually stayed in Saudi Arabia. I thought I was going to make jihad and all of that. But anyway, patterns and distinctions in the Afro and the Afro-American experience. I noticed not all, but many of the women at the festivals and the foods that were being served at the African Street Festival, used to be called the East Carnival. So much, eventually double fried Oreos, deep fried fish sandwiches with white bread and hot sauce and ketchup and red drinks. But they were Afro-owned businesses. And I noticed a pattern. I was always fascinated, like the obesity or the carrying around of all of this weight. So seeing it in from the, from the church, and then recognizing it in Islam. And I know some beautiful people that practice both faiths, and I've considered both of them was raised in one. To me, it was just very clear. It's depression. That's how it occurred to me and what I saw in my house. Suppressed anger, depression, unresolved issues, not having an outlet or having a way to process it, not having an ear, all the things that had happened to these different generations. And I'm sure coming from the Deep South or even from the Caribbean, both sides. If you've lived to be almost 100, I'm sure you have seen some things, especially if you're a dark chocolate. So numerous of my grandparents and great-grandparents were dark chocolate, and one side deep accents. So whether coming from the Caribbean or the South, if you live to be 100, you've seen some things. If you had to survive off of white rice or ground provision, you've seen some things. So where's the ear to process that? Where are the studies that focus just on our unique experience, which quite often and still often is not acknowledged? It is only now that it is even starting to be acknowledged. It is only now that we're hearing the language and starting to see some kinds of attention and workshops and studies to Afro males and the pressure that they're going to, like yoga and them having circles where they can deal with the pressure of, all the trauma that they've been through in safe spaces. Where is that for Afro women? Where are the safe spaces for us to unpack the roots of all the sexual violation that's going on that sends off a ripple effect of trauma, of unresolved trauma, because we don't speak about it? And when you go to, even when folks do decide to go to therapists, and now therapy is starting, the language is starting to be more acceptable, but still it's comprehended why chocolate people are not trusting of therapists. And even in different cultures now, I'm watching in the Asian human culture, I'm noticing folks are requesting therapists that are sensitive to their unique culture and our unique culture and our cultural norms and the unique things that we go through. People are now having more confidence to ask for that and have resources catered to them unapologetically. But it's very loaded with Afro people. So I can comprehend with compassion why many of us have a death wish. You can have a death wish with a ripped up, cut up body that looks very physically fit, or whether you have so much adipose tissue on your body from mindless consumption due to stress that you are in the category now of morbid obesity. And many of us may not know how to help each other. And so we can wind up imploding and or exploding on each other because we're not honest, but we don't know how to proceed emotionally, right? Mentally, we don't know how to proceed because we are so overwhelmed. We can't get past the overwhelm to feel a release so we can get some clarity and then to proceed. And this is something I recognize as a young woman. I recognize that my experience with church, I noticing the folks around me, somehow They didn't get consistent focus on life skills to process, to acknowledge and process the emotional, mental pain that we had experienced. So I said, okay, we're praying all day, but something is still missing for soon, almost like clockwork. And there's jokes about it in our culture and even some of our songs. You know, you party all day, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Thursday and Saturday, and then you go to church on Sunday. And so it appears that something wears off for all the praying and the consecration fast that we're doing. How come it doesn't land? Greetings. How come? You tell me respectfully in the comments. Why? What's the disconnect? There is a massive disconnect between what we know to do and what gets put into action. So I have observed, and I would say we are grossly, if we just ask a question, even if you don't know everything, I think we can acknowledge there's more than something's missing. There is a disconnect. There's a disconnect between the emotion and feeling better and knowing passion and something is off and we desire help and assistance. There's a disconnect between that and the activation of going through the withdrawal, because withdrawal comes a whole mental, psychological thing that is very uncomfortable. Who has a vested interest in you going through that process? And even should you go through that process with any degree of success being measured in your ability on your own, not with me, anybody, your ability to discern what's not working, what is unhealthy for your ability to consistently to have the clarity to walk away from interactions, people. You still, mind you, we live on the planet and sometimes in the same home with these people, but from inside, your ability to cut it off, to walk away from these habits, these self-sabotaging habits. Who has a vested interest? The only one that can have a really vested interest is not, because everything here is done for profit, whether you're going to the church. Even today, I've seen, now it's been some years where churches now pressure folks for their tithes, have penalized people for tithes. I mean, and the more you're up in the ranks and the hierarchy of the church, the more you're required to give. Who has a vested interest? But you, and you putting down habits. I don't care what the label you call yourself is, whatever, but your results. Who has a vested interest in supporting you and staying with you and walking through those habits that are sabotaging and draining the very life force out of you? Who? And if the pastor and the imam, they're just as addicted as you, and if they have just as many vices as you, where you at? It's a puzzle. You're on your own. That's what I've come to. You're on your own, which is why I have made a decision, just as an imperfect human being. But I may not know everything, but I observe patterns and clarity. Getting clear can save you so much time. I'm clear. This and that has given my folks this result. Not interested. I may not know everything to do, but I know this. If I eat this, it breaks out my skin. I can observe the patterns of my family in every single population that I have worked with. Of certain consumption patterns lean to this. There may be rare exceptions, and people, sometimes folks will be like, say, oh, this person smoked and it lived to this age. I mean, come on. We're looking for excuses to stay with the escapism. And there can be healthy escapism, and rest and reprieve is necessary. But if we are engaging in habits that are offing our liver. We're offing spleen. We are offing the arteries. We're doing that to ourselves. We may not want to admit that is what programming is. And we may think it's overly simple. I invite you to consider researching animal husbandry. The process, the psychological process, even with animals, of breaking an animal. How do you get an animal to consume something that it was not designed to eat, that under ideal circumstances in its original organic state, it would vomit and have a vile reaction to consuming what is not ideal for it? Consider consuming substances masquerading as food has a profound effect on your behavior. So if I'm eating something and consuming something that's not designed for me, would that not affect my mood, my temperament, quickness to anger, depression? All these trillion cells. What is the communication? If I'm eating rocks and pens, what does my body do? Alert, alert, alert. There's something in here that doesn't belong in here. Do you not think that that affects your psyche, your mood, day after day after day after day? And the catch is, as we go in and out of consciousness, chattel slavery for profit only ended because the new form of slavery is much more efficient and profitable. When you have populations of people, and I'm not saying this from righteousness, I'm not saying this from being a prude and being a non-sexual being, because that is a natural part of life. But the new form of slavery, human beings not limited to chocolate will volunteer themselves happily. It would appear on the surface, joyously, it would appear, to vices that would off them and pay for the enslavement to substances masquerading as food. They'll pay for the distraction. I was in a shop here in my travels the other day, and it's so interesting when you come outside of the states. You know, you develop a certain set of eyes, especially if you stay out more than a couple of months. Tourist is different than living in the place. And I saw this man, this brown man, and he looked really destitute, down on his luck. Looked like, like somebody that was perhaps was experiencing living on the streets. And he went into the store, and he was at the alcohol the shelf, because most of the stores here and the convenience store have, all have alcohol sections. And I was like, wow, he's down and out. But he's wanting to feel better. He's wanting to medicate. He's wanting the physiological chemical response to feel better. Does that make him a horrible human being? Obviously, he's experienced some trauma. Obviously, it's not cute living out on the streets. So a lot of times we can demonize and make each other bad or wrong. Now, this doesn't mean that we're not accountable for what we do, because we're each accountable. In whatever has happened to us, our life is what? 110% our responsibility. Yet, it has made sense to me, because I have this thing about understand. I've always felt intuitively like, if I can understand why, this is even as a young person, then I likely will have a better chance at doing something different if I can understand why what's being done is being done. Because it's likely the same thing that's facing this man as an alcoholic, or whatever he's trying to escape from, that most likely I'm going to be trying to escape from some mental pain or trauma or memories as well. So I have this thing, I've said, folks may laugh, that for many years I watched documentaries of junkies. This climate that we're in, we look at other groups of people and we laugh at other groups of people. Oh, ha, 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 they're so stupid. Ha, 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 people that have experienced cults, people that have experienced losing all of their money, people that may perhaps be in a relationship where they experience an abuse. And we have a tendency to think that could never be me. That ain't me, that's them. Humility would do us well. I think it's very efficient and very effective to humble ourselves to see, I've always had this thing like, where could that be me? I think it's much more effective than to come in and blurt and to make snap judgments. And there's a place for common sense judgment rather than condemnation. But to see, could that be me? I think it's wise, because we may think that we're not exposed to the same circumstances as this person that's down in the street. I'm sure maybe at one point that could have never been them. They may have thought that could have never been them. I think as young people in high school, as children, if we try to sneak a cigarette or some alcohol, something that doesn't smell good, that's going to off our teeth and our face and our lungs, our intention is not to off ourselves initially. That's not the intention. But we're looking to feel something. We're looking to escape from something that's unpleasant that's going on. So this ego, I find, is not efficient. And it could be very, very dangerous. It appears we're not encouraged to look at the whys. And when I look at the stadiums of us in churches, and sometimes just the mere theatrics, where a lot of our folks, some pastors, I'll say they got the gift of gab. And it's a lot. Oh, it makes you feel so good. But can we not see the patterns? Can we not see the patterns? Can we not see the patterns? We may think we're putting people up on pedestals because we're addicted to looking for saviors. And so with family members that I love, I can't go to your house and make the juices for you. And even in folks inquiring about the cocoon, right? And going into a cocoon, because I'm of the notion that it's time for many of us to go within, to go in and to do the work. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. It's not just talking about our hair. I mean, that's a part of it, radical self-acceptance. And yes, I get feedback sometimes. Oh, you're so positive. I'm so positive. There's yin and there is yang. And we've been trained to everything is good, everything good, everything good. So I think it has set the tone for us not to look at what we're saying is bad, but more so it's uncomfortable. It's unsightly. It's like, who wants to stick their hand in poo-poo? Who wants to smell body odor? Who wants to deal with the reality of all of the stuff that we have put into our bodies over the years, whether you're a nice person or not a nice person, whether you did intentionally or not intentionally, it has to come out. And we think it should come out in 2 weeks because I did a cleanse, or, if I eat like a handful of greens, that takes care of all my problems. We think if we get a ripped up body, then that's the end of all your problems. So there's some deep shadow work that we're not encouraged to sit with. We're not encouraged to sit and to do the uncomfortable work. And then we have an idea of what it should look like. Some of the things that we do to our body temples, you can't take back. And I often think, oh my gosh, I would love to have like a whole crowd of young people around me. I'm like, I could save y'all some time. I could save you some time. Some stuff is not worth it. It's not worth it. I don't care what they say. People are lying to you. They're not telling you all the other stuff they experience. They're not telling you what you experience with the gastric gut bypass and lap banding. They're not telling you what they experience with all the sugar daddies and all the other mental, emotional stuff you're putting yourself at risk for. People are not telling you about all the STDs that they have. They're not telling you what goes on behind the Instagram posts in their relationships. People are not going to tell you if they experience just some hard stuff. And people are not going to take because people are embarrassed. People are not going to tell you that it's not all it's cracked up to be. All the pleasure. Everything is not all it's cracked up to be. And there's a place for pleasure in life. I like enjoying life. But there's a conflict of interest. And the only one that could really have a sincere interest in you that's not for profit is you. And so, again, while I love joy and I love playing and I may experience makeup and stuff, I can tell you unapologetically to sit within your own body temple and be comfortable with yourself. And that's just one level. To be in integrity with yourself. And by integrity, there are many things that we're doing that in your quiet moments, especially in the early morning, I'm not there with you. You know that what you're consuming, your consumption patterns are not in alignment with what you say you want to experience in your life. You know that you may be engaged in ways of relating that are producing lackluster results, and we could be blaming it on other people. But our life is 110% our responsibility. When you're by yourself in your quiet moments, if you just come to present, which is why I love the early morning, the early day, you know that you're doing things. Even after all the prayer has worn off, you know that you have broken promises to yourself. And what does that do for you? That becomes a weight. That becomes a heavy weight. To have all this information, take all these workshops over the years, read all of these books, you got all this college education, all this holistic information that you do not activate. Do you realize that becomes a weight because you're not in integrity? The things that you haven't pursued, the things that you said you're going to get back to, even knowing if your house is not clean and if it's totally cluttered, that is a weight, because in your subconscious, you know that it's not being addressed. And so though some people may wonder, when you're in a dean in a zone and you're consistent with certain things, some folks I want to really marvel at, how do you do that? Well, then you have a different experience. When you can experience the thing that you thought was so hard, when you do it, oh my gosh, it gives you such not just a freedom, but the integrity, the personal power before your body temple changes. First, what you're going to feel tremendous about is that you acknowledge it. You did something about what you knew was there that you were ignoring. That gives you tremendous personal power and restored integrity. Without restoring our integrity, we that could lead to us to wind up being trolls all over the internet, looking for people to lash out at and have online arguments with, which is really a distraction from working on the things that you need to be working on and things that you're not addressing. We all have things that we're not addressing. Do you create a support for yourself? Do you give someone permission to check you? I know I keep folks, homies, and coaches in my pocket that I give permission to make me uncomfortable in a safe space, but make me uncomfortable and to hold up the mirror. Children will do this to you quite often. Children, babies will show you, will hold up the mirror, and that's uncomfortable. Otherwise, we're lashing out, looking for arguments, when if you think about it, there's so much stuff, there's so much work to be done on ourselves. There's so many things we're just not going after because we're afraid of being rejected, or that we're not good enough, or that you won't get acknowledgement for your ideas. That's all of us. We may be at different points in the spectrum. Do you have things that you're not pursuing, that you're not getting into action about? Are you able to sustain the action? Are you able to get into consistent action around personal development, continued study? Do you have the ability to focus on a book that's not just mindless entertainment, even in a book? To focus on a skill that you would like to acquire? Are you able to sustain your personal movement practice? Whatever your size, are you able to sustain it? I invite you to question if you're not able to sustain the investment of energy that is required for you to have the experiences that you want to have, to be in action around what you say is important to you while you're walking around in this life cycle, right? And if there's another one, most likely that life cycle is going to be a continuation of this. So, many of us are trying to get out of jail free. Or some of us are just so tired because in reality, we have depleted ourselves. Do you have enough energy left for your movement practice, to make your juices, to make your food, to take some bitter herbs? Do you exercise the maturity to do what is uncomfortable? Do you create, which is smart, intelligent, strategic, efficient? Do you create the support for yourself? So I'm inviting you, or I'm not going to drag this out. I'm just sharing. I'm just on a vibe. I'm just on a vibe this morning. I'm inviting you to create a great day for yourself on purpose because you said so. I'm inviting you, it's a vibe, the more the merrier, on a path of radical self-acceptance. Your stretch marks, your loose skin, if you gain weight loss, and love yourself to a next level, because this is the body temple that you have right now. This is what you got. And whatever you got right now is a result of what you have been doing. So own it. I invite you to. I don't tell grown folks what to do. I invite you to own it, not to bypass. The bypass is going to cost you more time. I invite you to own it. To own it. Own what you've done to your body. Even if you're depressed, somebody did something to you, own it. Own it. Own all the ice cream and the gigantic bags of Bon-Ton or whatever potato chips or the organic blue corn chips that you were overeating because it's organic. I invite you to own it. Own it and set yourself free. Own it. Own it. The relationships that you have wasted time in, maybe out of fear of being alone. One of the biggest things, and I invite you to look at the 6 basic fears of human beings. And I invite you to consider there's certain things that companies, entities, predators, they make it their business to understand the human psyche. I invite you to consider how much more efficient you could be if you understand. And it doesn't have to be a big production. If you can just sustain and cultivate the practice of quiet so you can hear. Because it can be very compromised as you're moving about in survival mode. Almost like you can't do the two at the same time in terms of them being present in your mind. Right? So it will be sleepwalking through life. That's why I encourage relaxation. Relaxation. You may think you don't have time to relax. I would say you almost don't have time to not relax. From the context of the relaxation will help you be grounded down into your body so you can hear. So you can hear, you can hear, you can hear, you can hear. I invite you, consider, are you investing? Are you trying to do everything cheap? I don't want to go to a free surgeon, heart doctor, accountant. Be careful on this internet, because when you try to do everything free, cheap, easy, likely you're going to get some snake oil. And again, a lot of the bypasses are going to cost you more. There is discomfort in life. There is yang in life. The very thing, those bitters that everybody's avoiding, which why are we avoiding it now? I don't know why we'll ever avoid. Well, because it's seemingly not pleasant. You can cultivate a taste for bitters. That part of our palate that can sense bitters is there for a reason. I call bitters a food group. Over here, bitters is a divine food group. And it's one I invite you to consider. Let me know. This is one I'm going to put this question out to y'all. Let me know in the comments if you try to sweeten your bitters or if you're even taking bitters. Consider the magnitude of bitters. Consider the magnitude of fresh, no chaser bitters and their importance. And everything that we're doing out here in the physical has a psychological effect. Are you avoiding the bitters of life? Or are you avoiding the bitterness of decluttering and that you got to actually let some things go to make space for something else? Are you avoiding it? Are you avoiding being uncomfortable? Are you avoiding sweating your hair out? Just in accepting these things can make the way for so much clarity. When you are crystal clear, oh my gosh, you can be so efficient and it can save you so much time. So that being said, y'all create a great day on purpose because you said so. Whatever's going around, whatever may have been happened to you, whatever you did to yourself, because a lot of times we are placing ourselves in harm's way. We are floating and putting ourselves in harm's way. Sexually, dietarily, financially, we're putting ourselves in harm's way rather than get naked. I'm not there with you. Get naked with yourself and accept 110% responsibility for your life. Can't change other folks. You're lucky. You're fortunate if you cultivate a taste for bitter herbs to change yourself and take on what is safe and uncomfortable and create the support you need for yourself. Yourself. Create a great day on purpose. And for those joining me in the cocoon, I invite you to consider and take an assessment of the tools that you have around you, that you have access to. Take a look around, look at all the tools that you spend all that money on that you're not using, and get prepared to also make use of those things and to activate what I would call those are treasures and forms of currency, and those are investments that you can activate. Prepare yourself to go into the cocoon. Definitely not by force. Willing, submit yourself to going in and to pull a lot of your energy back from everything that's pulling your energy outward, and to focus on you. It will make you a better person, a better mother, a better husband, a better lover, better for yourself to go in, because going out is not all what it's cracked up to be. And you run the numbers and see if you're getting something back for the currency, the valuable currency of your attention. Are you getting something back for being like this for hours? Are you getting something back? Or for the people that you're giving your attention, you're giving ear to, and you're giving your time to? Are you getting something back? I invite you to consider you are your best investment. All right, y'all. See you soon. Create a great day. Feel free to share this with someone that could benefit. Feel free to replay this at lunchtime or perhaps in the evening. I invite you to declutter, make some piles, and put this on. Create a positive support for yourself so you can keep a focus, because it's very challenging to hear both of these different frequencies, these different channels of communication at the same time. You get me stuffing yourself mindlessly. That means the other part of the intelligence is there. It's always communicating, but you can't hear it because the other volume has gone up to the level and the other one has gone up too loud. All right. See you soon.